friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Katey Flowers and this is another episode of the Tarot in Practice series. We've done quite a few of these videos now and basically this series is all about me working with and demonstrating me working with the tarot decks that I own that are on my shelf. So over the course of about 1 month, I spent some quality time with one particular tarot deck and I vlogged that experience with you. So I go through different tarot spreads, different tarot activities, and I walk through like what the process has been like for me, share with you my tarot interpretations, all of that good stuff. So it's a very hands-on, practical demonstration of what my tarot practice looks like. If you've missed the other videos, there is a whole playlist which I will leave in the cards above and in the description box below for you if you'd like to catch up. But for this video and for this month, I'm going to be working with This Might Hurt Tarot by Isabella Rotman. This is a beautiful independently published tarot deck that was released, I don't know, I'd say about 2 years ago. It is very clearly and I think quite heavily influenced by the imagery of the Rider-Waite-Smith and the artwork by Pamela Coleman-Smith. But it just gives it a new, fresh, modern, sort of contemporary, updated spin, along with introducing some much needed diversity to the deck. So it doesn't have some sort of old-timey feel. Instead, the characters in these cards all look like they're from our world today. They're all wearing sort of like modern clothes. You'll see cars, motorbikes, all of that sort of stuff. In fact, it says it quite clearly right here on the back. This Might Hurt Tarot is a modern deck in the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, keeping time-honored symbolism, but losing the medieval context. This deck is designed to be both easy to read and highly relatable. Clothing and scenery are modernized, diversity is embraced, and queerness is lovingly acknowledged. So I have had this deck for about a year, I think, but I haven't really worked with it. Actually, I don't think I have worked with it at all yet. It's just one of those things where I like bought the deck and just sort of, I don't know, I was busy doing other stuff. I was, you know, invested in spending time with other decks and I just haven't gotten around to working with this one yet, which makes it a perfect candidate for the Tarot in Practice series, I think. Because it is so heavily Rider-Waite-Smith influenced, I think it will be pretty easy for me to read. I think I'm just going to dive right in and see how I go. But I'm also excited to see how the artist and the creator have like made the deck their own and like, I don't know, just sort of where I can go with this slightly new and updated imagery. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Hello friends, I'm here at the end of my day and I thought we could just do a little doing well, do better. What am I doing well at the moment? Got the Empress. Nice. And what do I need to do better? Oh, I got the World. Okay, interesting, because these are numerologically two of my sort of cards. Let's talk about that. So what I meant by that is that if I add up the digits of my birth date, I get 12, which is corresponding to the Hanged Man. But if you sort of work with those two numbers, you can also get 3, which is the Empress, or 21, which is the World. Like the numbers for those 3 major arcana all equal, like if you add them up individually, they all come back to 3. Like they're all associated numerologically with the number 3. So they're all connected to me. Now this comes from my memory of Mary K. Greer's Tarot for Yourself. And I say that because I read that book a very long time ago. So I'm sure I've sort of like morphed my own interpretations of what she said in that book. But how I now have come to think of these cards is that I think of the Hanged Man as sort of like my life path card, not my personality card, although maybe that's how she describes it. I more think of it as like my representative of me and so much of my life journey. I think it symbolizes a lot of the successes and struggles and just like the overall like journey that I seem to be going through, if that makes sense. And then I tend to think of the Empress and the World as two sort of like teacher cards for me. They're two cards that I struggle with different elements of. I think I'm sort of closely related to these cards in the sense that I can tap into the energies of these two cards like fairly easily. Like I'm like connected to them in a way. But rather than representing me and my strengths, but also my life path, they represent sort of like teaching moments or things that I need to learn in this lifetime, if that makes sense. And so my interpretations of these cards are going to be influenced by that sort of experience of these two cards and sort of like what I've built up in my head around these two messages. So for what I'm doing well, the Empress, what I often think of the Empress as teaching me is challenges I have around societal expectations of femininity, but also of sensuality, sexuality, and just groundedness. I think I struggle a lot with groundedness. I think I'm a very like in my head kind of person. I think the Empress also has a lot of lessons for me around creativity, and the fact that I have very long ago, many years ago, actively chosen to remain child-free. Like, I don't want to be a mother. And yet this is one of, like, numerologically, this is one of the most important cards for me. So to find ways of tapping into creativity and what that means for me outside of motherhood, which is kind of like, I like that that's my relationship to this card, because I almost feel like that's an exploration of this card that we as a tarot community, I think, should have more of what this card represents outside of motherhood. Not saying that it cannot represent motherhood, but that's not all this card means. That's not all it represents. And I think the way that this card has been represented as a mother, as a pregnant person, so often has sort of made our collective understanding and conversation around the card more narrow. And so my journey with this card has been to open it back up in a lot of ways, and to find ways that work for me, opening it back up in ways that work for me. So what am I doing well at the moment? Well, I think this card is telling me that I'm doing pretty well at taking care of myself. Like, I've been through a pretty challenging period and I did pretty well getting through it. And I think the Empress can speak a lot to nurturing, taking care for. And that can be for family, for others, for community, but it's also for the self. I'm also thinking of like abundance and enjoyment and sensuality. And I think, we bought our first home out, this apartment, last year. And I think, really making this place our own, and like this room my own, has been an interesting journey. And I think almost like an interesting journey in empressing, as Carrie Mallon would say. I think the Empress also speaks of passion in a lot of ways. And I think in the last year or two, I have been learning how to, I don't know, rather than just have like bursts of passion, to sort of like live in alignment with what connects me to what I'm passionate about. Does that make sense? That sounded quite convoluted and a little pretentious, but I think I am getting better at that. I think I'm getting better at navigating life in a way that allows me to tap into what I'm passionate about on a more regular basis, and essentially like live passionately, live joyously, live sensuously. And that is what in so many ways can make life feel abundant. Now, for what I need to do better, the world. So often this card for me in a more shadow aspect does represent perfectionism. Like, in the positive aspect, this card is about completion, success, like actualization. But I think when we idealize those things, they can become really toxic. And when we sort of set up expectations and goals and focuses that are unrealistic, are unattainable, like they become harmful to us in so many ways. And perfectionism isn't just about trying to do things well. Like, that's not perfectionism. Perfectionism is when we set ourselves such high standards and they're so unattainable, like they're unrealistic. And then like that added layer of, we then judge our worth as human beings, our value as individuals, as people, against these standards that are unattainable. And from that comes so much shame and self-judgment. Like, it's a really toxic, harmful cycle to be in. I think so many perfectionists, we can convince ourselves that striving for these unrealistic, lofty goals can push us towards greatness, can drive us to go beyond what we currently can do. But I think so often we just end up in this cycle, trapped in this cycle of perfectionism, which is so harmful, and just really, it degrades our self-worth, our value, our self-appreciation. And in that cycle, you cannot develop, you cannot become better, because it's so inward focused and so harmful. So when this card pops up for me in a shadow aspect, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of checking in where perfectionism may be ruling, may be taking over, may be harming me, because I know it's a tendency, a very strong tendency that I've done a lot of work with in the past, but it's something that I have to keep reflecting on and making sure that I'm not letting it negatively influence my life in the way that it used to. And so I guess this card is coming up for me to remind me that there are some red flags for me. And I'm definitely, now that I'm sitting here reflecting, I'm aware there are some, maybe not fully fledged, like outright, in full force, perfectionist cycles going through at the moment. But there are like the beginnings of them, the suggestions of them. And I need to work on that before it becomes a big issue. So just checking in with the expectations I'm currently putting on myself, and making sure that they're realistic, they're healthy, and that they're serving me rather than harming me. This is a pretty potent little duo, especially given my numerological association with these two cards. So I'm thinking I'm going to set them out on my desk for the next couple of days, just so I can, I don't know, spend a bit more time with these two cards that are like numerologically linked to me and obviously coming up for a reason. So it's beginning of 2022, so I've decided to take this opportunity to do a New Year spread for myself. Now, this is loosely based on a New Year spread that I shared here on the channel a few years ago. That was quite a large spread with many positions. Today I wanted to sort of narrow it down a little bit and get a bit more specific. So I'm going to use that as a loose guideline, but reduce the number of cards that I'm going to be drawing today. I started by going through my deck and pulling out Strength, which is my card of the year for 2022. Then I drew out 5 other cards to help me sort of reflect on the lessons learnt from 2021 and how I can move forward, embrace the opportunities and challenges of 2022. And of course, this being a larger, more intentional, meaningful, I would say, spread, I decided to journal the experience as well. I don't journal all the spreads and card pulls that I do, but when it's a little bit more significant, I tend to. So for position number 1, I was asking the question, what did last year teach me? And out popped the Hanged Man, which, as we've already explored in this video, is my life path card. It's a very meaningful card to me. And I feel like 2021 taught me to be patient with liminal spaces and how to remain true to myself despite my external circumstances. It encouraged me to respond more carefully, to take time, to contemplate and to consider multiple perspectives, but not to get too hung up on the details. It also taught me a lot about the importance of giving into or accepting inevitable and very necessary change. That resistance and struggle is not always what is most needed. For position number 2, I asked about the strengths that I need to take with me into 2022, and I drew the 3 of Pentacles. To me, this was a message to take with me my strong work ethic and my inclination to participate in a team environment, my desire to contribute to a project or idea, to be a part of something bigger than myself, to take with me my desire to learn and my willingness to lead when needed, my ability to listen and to support where I can. Ultimately, I feel like this was a reminder to participate, to contribute, and to take pride in the work that I do. Card number 3 was to represent what needs to be left behind, and here I drew the Lovers card. And this made me think about the fact that I need to stop looking for love externally, stop always second guessing and searching for more. It was a reminder that I have great things right here, right now, and for me to choose the amazing life that I already have, rather than always dreaming of some idealized one that doesn't even exist. Then card number 4 was, of course, my card of the year, which I already mentioned is Strength. And this I calculate numerologically. It's a common way of calculating a card of the year. Kellyanne's provided a really clear and thorough video about how you can calculate your card of the year, so I'll leave a link to that in the description box below if you're not sure what I'm talking about here and you'd like to know more. And for me, card of the year is like an interesting concept. I don't know that it necessarily like predicts what's going to happen throughout the year, but for me, I've definitely noticed themes that are relevant to my card of the year, and I just try to think of it as a way for me to view the challenges and opportunities and lessons. It's basically like a lens that I choose to view my experience through. For me, I just find that this helps add meaning to my experience a lot of the time, and it can also help me understand how I can best approach difficult situations as well. So I haven't really written like an interpretation or a meaning here, because I do sort of like to just allow my year to unfold and for me to be reflecting on how my experiences relate to my card of the year as I go throughout the year. I just jotted down some keywords that I think of when I see the Strength card and what this Strength card in particular made me think of as reminders of different things that might pop up or might be extra important to me in 2022. So some of those keywords are fortitude, resilience, compassion, commitment, tame, nurture, tend to, balance, and of course, strength. For card number 5, I asked, how can I embrace the opportunities of the Strength card? So beginning to explore a little bit more my card of the year and how it might present for me throughout the year. And here I drew the King of Wands. And here I journaled a little bit about the need to take ownership and responsibility, to step into roles of leadership when I need to, be strong, committed, passionate, decisive, and to really remember that it's my actions that define me, Not to rest on my laurels or to just feel like because I think a certain way or I feel a certain way that that's good enough, that it's my actions that are most important, both to my impact on the world, but also to how people see me. That I need to be who I want to be and show rather than tell. Be bold, be brave, be balanced. And this card also got me thinking back to position number 2 with the 3 of Pentacles. It got me thinking about community and collaboration and the need and importance of wielding power with care and to take responsibility and not to avoid leadership and standing up and to do what is needed when I need to. And position number 6, how can I best approach the challenges of the Strength card? Here I drew the Knight of Pentacles. And here I just thought about the good old-fashioned saying, slow and steady wins the race, about how important it is to commit and to keep going. Avoid making rash decisions and to err on the side of caution when emotions are running high. But importantly, not to give up. Don't turn away from challenges. Keep moving forward. Keep trying. That I need to be diligent, reliable, resilient, and to stick with a strong routine. And I need to be wary and cautious of my tendency towards being overwhelmed and then my response to that, which is often avoidance. Overconfidence is not ideal, but I also need to not make excuses or just give up when things get hard. Ultimately, the message here for me was to just show up and to do my best. So that's a bit of an insight into my New Year's spread and what my card of the year is going to be for 2022. I know this video will be going up a bit later in the month, maybe even in February, but if you're still interested in doing the New Year's spread, maybe you prefer to do them at your birthday, I'll leave a link to my video in the description box below if you want a larger spread. Feel free to play around with it and adjust it like I have here though. Hi, so I am sitting here. I am exporting a video, so if you can hear a bit of a hum, it's because my computer is struggling right here next to me. But I thought this was the perfect little opportunity, a little bit of space in my day to sit down. And what I want to do is sort of an activity from my Therapeutic Tarot series that I spoke about. Hang on, let me just check. I think it's called Self-Care Activities with the Tarot. And in that video, I basically talk about how you can either do this sort of like off the cuff, or what I've done is, or what I did do back then, like 3 or 4 years ago, is I went through each card in the entire deck and thought of a self-care activity that I felt was connected to the deck somehow. I'll leave a link to this video below. You can go check it out. And I just stumbled across my list of all 78 cards and the self-care activities that I assigned them. Like I said, this is a few years ago. Back in March 2018, I uploaded that video and wrote that blog post, which the blog post is now private. I don't remember what activities I assigned each card, but I just thought it would be fun. And because I feel like some of these might not be relevant to me anymore, or might not be relevant to me like that I can do immediately, what I want to do is draw 3 cards at random from the This Might Hurt Tarot, and then I'm going to have a look at the self-care activities that I assigned those cards back in 2018, and then I'm going to pick one to do in the next, hopefully today, but if it's not feasible to do today, in the next few days before the end of the week. So got my deck here, just going to give it a shuffle and draw 3 cards. So I got the 4 of Swords for my first card. If I were going off this card particularly, I might think it was a suggestion to go and have a nap, which I wouldn't be opposed to right now. But what I assigned this card back in 2018 is to write or journal. And I feel like this would have come from a particular deck and its depiction of this card. But yeah, there we go. Write or journal is one option. Got the 4 of Wands, another 4, interesting. My suggested activity was to listen to fun music or watch Eurovision. I like both of those options too. And our last card is the Emperor, which is 4. 4, 4, 4. Wow. And this one is more an approach, less like a particular activity that I wrote down, which is interesting. I said, be bold, fake it till you make it. And honestly, at the beginning of this, I said I was going to pick one, but I kind of want to do all 3. I think I could definitely do with a bit of being a bit more bold, faking it till I make it a little bit, in particular areas of my life. And then the idea of listening to some fun music. I don't think it'll be watching Eurovision right now. I mean, anybody who likes Eurovision knows that thing goes for 4 hours. So I'm not going to be watching an entire Eurovision right now. But I think I could pop on a few of my favourite dancey songs and just have a good time. And the idea of doing a bit of writing or journaling is really appealing to me as well. I would really love to write a letter actually to my grandmother. So I think I'm going to do all three. That was unexpected, but I think I can and I want to. Like all three of these are things that I want to do. And I also feel like, the fact that 444s are coming up, maybe this is sort of symbolizing that this is like for me, the 4s are so much about structure, stability, and systems in a way, foundations, routines, things like that. So I'm also, just the fact that all three of these are 4s, I'm sort of also taking note there that maybe those are themes that I need to also be focusing on in terms of my self-care. But this was just a fun little activity. My video has finished exporting, so that's good news. I can get to work on that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I certainly have. So I'm going to dance around my living room, listening to some fun music later this evening. I might write a letter, and I'm also going to be bold, and fake it till I make it in the areas where I'm feeling a little anxious or uncertain. If this inspires you to play around with your deck and come up with a couple of self-care activities for yourself, I would love to hear in the comments below what cards you drew and what self-care activities you came up with for yourself. Okay, so my month with the This Might Hurt Tarot is over. I've done quite a number of sort of small daily draws in between the clips that I've shown you. So I've spent, I feel like, a decent amount of quality time with this deck for this month, and I'm quite happy with my experience of it. As I said at the outset, this is a deck that I've had for a little while that I'd never worked with. It's just sort of been sitting on my shelf, and I always liked it well enough, that's why I bought it. But I don't know, I think because it's so Rider-Waite-Smith, I never really bothered picking it up. Like, I have so many other decks that I just love and that bring something so fresh and unique and exciting to the table that I go to for particular reasons. And this deck just sort of never fell into line for me. Like, I never really knew why I had it, I guess, is one way of putting it. And I have to say that during this experience, I really enjoyed reading with it. It was just very easy to read with. I felt like the messages flowed, they were very clear, they were direct, they were simple. I don't know, I just really enjoyed the experience of reading it. I would not say, however, that I've like fallen in love with the deck. I think in some ways that is because it doesn't feel particularly new. I mean, I love the fact that the artist has intentionally gone out of their way to make sure that the deck was as representative and diverse as possible. We need more of that in our tarot decks. And I think especially for a Rider-Waite-Smith, which is so often the deck that we recommend beginners to start with. And I do as well, not because I think the deck is any better than any other deck, but because the ecosystem of resources is there at your fingertips. If you pick up a book, it's probably going to cover the Rider-Waite-Smith meanings. And so for me, the best argument, I guess, for why this deck, like why I'm glad that this deck exists, is the fact that it is essentially a modern, representative, updated version of the Rider-Waite-Smith. And I would much rather recommend something like this, although it is independently published, so a little bit less accessible, I suppose. I would rather be able to recommend something like this than the Rider-Waite-Smith itself, or at least to have that option for people. But I suppose because it's so Rider-Waite-Smith, I didn't feel like it shook things up so much for me. Like, I just had these revolutionary moments with it that I think of it in some kind of special, way in my heart. I really like it, and I'm really glad I have it, and it was a really great reader. Like, that's how I feel about the deck. Maybe I'm selling the deck a little bit short. It's not exactly a Rider-Waite-Smith knockoff. There certainly are some choices that are made that do alter the imagery and the scenery slightly. Some cards go beyond slightly even, like, for example, the Judgment card. So I don't want to sound like I'm selling this deck short. I really like it, and I really enjoyed reading with it. And I think it is a deck I'm going to keep, largely because having some really solid workhorse kind of decks that you know you can go to and just throw down the cards and get a clear message that, don't always just dig up all of this metaphorical subconscious stuff, but just give you like clear readings. It's nice to know that you have those decks on your shelf. And I suppose for me, the decks that I feel fit that category that I currently own and that I do work with or have worked with in the past are things like the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Fountain Tarot, even like the little monsters to an extent. And I like all of those decks, but I like more that this deck is representative and diverse. Like that's something that I value. So even though this deck didn't like blow me away with like these new interpretations that were really exciting and invigorating, I appreciate it for what it is, and I'm glad that I have it. And I'm also glad that I finally got to working with it, because I feel like now I just sort of, I don't know, I feel like I've broken that seal, I suppose, in a way. Like I feel like I can just pick it off the shelf and throw the cards down. And I don't know, I'm just happy. I feel quite content with this experience. I didn't talk too much about the guidebook in this video, and I did use it a few times just to sort of check in with what the creator had to say, and I do really like the little white book as well. Quite a number of the cards are based off people in the creator's life, which gives that sort of personal touch that I really appreciate. And I think it's through the guidebook that I really came to appreciate that this deck is not just a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. Like there's a lot more intention and thought that has gone behind the creation of the images. And obviously if you flick through, a lot of them are Rider-Waite-Smith inspired, but I think it deviates a little bit more from the Rider-Waite-Smith template than maybe even I was giving it credit for at the beginning of this video. I hope I'm not sounding like flat. I guess because I'm not like, you know, next world level of connection with this deck. I don't want to like oversell how much I'm like in love with it. I'm trying to be as honest as I can. And I'm worried that that then sounds like I don't really like the deck. I very much like it. It is strongly in the happy to have category. I just don't know that it's the sort of deck that I would pick for, you know, like a top 5 or a top 10 favorite of all time. Like the sort of deck that I just couldn't live without. I don't have that sort of feeling to it. But at the same time, I'm very happy to have it. And I think it will serve really well in my collection, and I really enjoyed my reading experience. Anyway, I don't want to labor the point. I feel like my tarot and practice videos have gotten a bit long, so I'm trying to condense them a little bit more. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I hope you enjoyed following along with my experience of working with the This Might Hurt Tarot for the first time. I would love to hear in the comments below if you have this deck, how you find it, or if you decided to do any of the readings or activities that I shared in this video. I'd love to hear your experience of those too. But before we go, I have to say a big thank you to the people who essentially sponsor all of the videos on my channel, and that is my patrons over on Patreon. And especially big thank you goes to Livia, Lynette Brown, Laurie and Ian Yitzhak for their very generous support of me and my content. If you would like to support me and continuing to make this content for free, check out my Patreon in the link in the description box below. And that's about it. So I'll talk to you in the next video. Until then, so much love. Bye.